because of certain people holding certain harsh views. Okay, cutting of the Shajar al-Ridwan. So this is a tree under which the Prophet ﷺ took allegiance from the companions. So this is one of the main evidences of the Salafi school for cutting down places linked to the Prophet ﷺ, destroying them. And Sunni scholars of the past responded to this. And inshallah, if God willing, on Friday we'll cover this in more detail, where we talk about visiting the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. Traveling to visit the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, which the Salafi school says haram. They said you could visit, but you can't travel to visit with the intention of visiting the grave. So that's a separate issue. Anyway, the cutting of Shajarat al-Ridwan. Ibn Sa'd narrates in his Tabaqat al-Kubra, Nafi said, people would come to the tree called Shajara al-Ridwan and pray there. This reached Umar bin al-Khattab, who warned them regarding it and then cut it down. So this is authentic narration. First of all, there were people going and praying there at the time of Sayyidina Umar, companions and the Salaf. They were practicing this. So it didn't regard it as being something so clear-cut as being haram or shirk. So it reached him and he cut it down. Now, what's the response to this from Sunni scholars? Why did he cut it down? There's different explanations. Tafsir Tabari says that the tree had been swept away in a flood before this incident. So the people who were going to this supposed tree were actually going to something which was not authentically reported as being the tree. That's one explanation. That's why Sayyidina Umar, they said, cut it down. Bukhari records companions being unable to agree which tree it was. So this is coming up in a bit more detail, but there's narration in Sahih Bukhari where the companions, after the event took place and later on, they said, we went to look for the tree. So they actually went to look for the tree, which shows that you can actually go and look for the tree. They were looking for it for a reason. They went to look for the tree and they were disagreeing with themselves about which tree it was. So that's one explanation. That's why Sayyidina Umar cut it down, because they argue that he said, we can't agree on the tree, so why are you going to this tree anyways? It's incorrect. It was also narrated by companions after Umar that they said they knew the tree. So that's coming up later on as well. And Umar did this so people might not think it was wajib or out of fear for those newly entered into Islam. So Sayyidina Umar might have done this also, they say, because people were entering into Islam, and if they saw the companions and the Salaf going out to a tree and praying there, they might get confused. So he wanted just to cut that off, or he thought people might think is wajib. And there's a narration of that coming up. Right, so what did the great scholars of Islam explain this? How did they explain this incident? Hafidh ibn Hajar, who's one of the great scholars, everybody accepts him. He said the summary of this is that Ibn Umar would make tabarruk with these places. Right, that's coming up later on. Sayyidina Umar had a son, Abdullah ibn Umar, who's also a companion. And he would go out and pray in places where the Prophet ﷺ prayed in. And remember, this is talking about a tree being cut down. He would actually go and water a tree that the Prophet ﷺ prayed under, which is coming up. The story is, so Hafidh ibn Hajar is saying, how do you explain all of this? Hadith about the companions seeking blessings of the Prophet ﷺ, Abdullah ibn Umar going out and praying in places, and then Sayyidina Umar cutting down a tree. How do you match it all up together? How do you reconcile everything? He said the summary of this is that Ibn Umar would make tabarruk with these places. So he's pointing out Ibn Umar, his son, would make tabarruk. And his scrupulousness in following is well known, and this does not contradict that which is established from his father, that he saw people in a journey going to a specific place and he asked regarding it. They said the Prophet ﷺ prayed there. He said whoever needs to pray should do so, otherwise carry on, for the people of the book were destroyed because they followed the traces of their prophets and took them as churches and monasteries. Because this from Umar was on the basis that he disliked their visiting these places without prayer. So he didn't want people going there without praying, or feared that it might become difficult for the one who does not know the reality of the matter and think it is wajib. So he was concerned it might be wajib as well. So he's offering the other explanation. And both of these matters are not applicable to Ibn Umar, which is a very important point, because he's saying his son, this doesn't apply to his son. So his son can go out, and so it was his son, Abdullah ibn Umar, a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, deemed it to be fine and no problem to go out and pray in these places and water a tree that the Prophet ﷺ prayed under. Because it doesn't apply to his son can do it. For other people, they just want to be a bit careful. That's one explanation. Likewise, the hadith of Itban, and he's asking the Prophet ﷺ, has been mentioned previously. We're going to mention that in a moment, in which he requested him ﷺ to pray in his house, to take it as a place of prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ answered his request, and this is a proof of tabarak with the praises of the pious. This is a hadith coming up as well. So companions would ask the Prophet ﷺ to come to their house, to pray in their house, and then they would make that place a place of prayer, a musalla, which is proof that why did they ask the Prophet ﷺ to come all the way to their house and pray there, and then they make that place a prayer place? Okay, because they weren't able to come to the Masjid, the Nabawi Sharif. Our blessings. Okay, so that's because you have all these different narrations, so how do you join them all together? That's what Hafiz ibn Hajar is doing. Right, and then carrying on. So this is still discussing the issue of the tree. Tariq bin Abdul Rahman said, I traveled for Hajj and passed by a group of people praying. I said to them, what is this masjid? They replied, this is the tree where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was given the pledge known as Bay'at Ridwan. It's the same issue that we discussed earlier. I then came to Sa'id bin Musayyib and informed him of this. Sa'id replied, what did he say? Are they committing bid'ah or shirk? He said, my father informed me that he was amongst those who pledged allegiance to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ below the tree. He added that the next year when we went out, we had forgotten the place and could not locate it. Sa'id said, the companions of Muhammad did not know its location, but you somehow know of it. You know better. And this is Bukhari. Couple of points. This is that point about, say that Umar may have wished to cut down that tree because of this narration that the companions didn't agree. So they were going to the incorrect place. Likewise, Sayyid bin Musayyib, he didn't say, why are people going there and praying? He said, we don't know where the tree is. That's what he's saying. He's not condemning people for going out and praying there. He's just saying, the companions don't know, then how can you know? But it's interesting because there was a companion who was blind, who said, if I could see, I would show you where that tree is. So not all the companions forgot that place. Some of them did. Okay, and then it says, look, here, when we went out, we had forgotten the place, meaning they went looking for the tree because they deemed it permissible to go and look for where the Prophet ﷺ had visited. Carrying on, Nafi said, we returned the next year, however, no two people could agree on the tree under which we gave the Pledge of Allegiance, and this was a mercy of Allah, Sayyid Bukhari. And then there's a long quote coming up, I'm just going to skip it because of time. But Hafiz ibn Hajar explains this. He says, what does the mercy of Allah mean? The mercy of Allah might mean that it was good, it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deliberately caused the companions to forget where the tree was, because there were people entering Islam, they were new into Islam, and if they saw people venerating, going to a tree and praying, they might get the wrong idea because they were recently into Islam. That's one understanding of mercy from Allah. The other understanding is that Allah's mercy descended there. So that's what Hafiz ibn Hajar says, that people might go to get the wrong idea and start thinking the tree has a special power in of itself, which is not true. Okay, so that's a long quote. Right. So that's the Sunni